Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Life as an Autistic Person podcast. Today's episode is episode 3, titled The Discovery. And what I mean by that is I'm going to be talking about how I discovered I was autistic in the first place, talking about some of the signs that made me think I was autistic, and even some of the process after I discovered I was autistic, like, after the diagnosis, trying to get things like my 504 plan or whatever for school, and how that did not work. So yeah, let's just get right to it, shall we? So again, like I said, before we get into the actual discovery of, maybe I am autistic, I want to start when I suspected it was different than everyone else. And that was, very early on. In fact, it was when my dad passed away. Before that even, where I just didn't like talking to people. I wasn't very social. I was slightly more social, I guess, when my dad was alive. I talked about, again, different things in my different episodes, like how my dad passed away and how I was very, I thought it was just kind of sad, depressed because he passed away. And I thought I didn't have the skills necessary to, basically be a man, couldn't talk to girls or even have friends because of him. He wasn't around to teach me. And I think partly that's the case. But, I realize now that it wasn't just because my dad passed away. It was more stuff that, I was born with. Because, again, even before he died, I was, like, a very similar person, I talked about this story a bit in one of my past episodes, how in kindergarten, when I first got there, I did not want to talk to anyone, not even the teachers. The teachers kind of had to force me to participate in like some kind of dance thing to remember the months, January, February, March, April. So, and like even then I still wasn't very social, but it didn't matter to me because, I had a family and, things changed after my dad passed away where I felt very, depressed and sad. But like I also had no one else to teach me these tools, which I thought was the reason for the longest time why I was the way I was. I didn't have friends for like the longest time. Only until like 4th grade, I slightly started to talk to more people, but like barely. 5th grade more so. And in middle school, I basically had to become a different person to even make friends, if I'm being honest. And I always thought it was weird. I always thought it was weird for multiple different reasons. That's one of the big ones. But another big reason why I always felt different and weird was because I have this vivid memory of, it was around Halloween time, I believe, of like kindergarten, or maybe it was a little bit after. I like either way, there was like some sort of event thing in school, and I remember the teacher telling us, tell your parents this and this for the event in the next few days or whatever. Like, this was before, usually now, like in schools, they give you a paper if there's something important going on, like in an event, but this time they didn't. So they just told us, tell your parents this and this and this when they come pick you up. And, most kids would not think about that constantly, and just, they would either forget or they would just remember, and say, this, but they won't think about it constantly. Not me, though. I thought about it constantly throughout the rest of the day after the teacher told us that. I kept repeating it over and over in my mind, the same things, and then I finally told my mom, and then my mom was like, okay, and then I don't think we even went to the event or whatever. It was just basically anticlimactic, and like I just kept going over and over the details of this event that the teacher told us to tell, and I was like the only person that did that probably, and I was wondering, why was I like that, Am I crazy, Then there's other times, which still happened somewhat recently, like up until like I left elementary school to middle school. But like this happened a lot where I would walk, how you walk, right? I would count the steps and I would like try to make sure they're even. 1, 2, 3, I would count and then also make sure that I was going the right distance. I wasn't going too far ahead from my other foot, if that makes sense. And again, I just thought, like, what is wrong with me? I tried to stop it, and sometimes I could for like a little bit, but a lot of the times I just kept thinking, like, why do I want to do this in the first place? So that was the whole thing where I'm like, okay, what the heck is wrong with me? So yeah, so that combined with the friends thing, not having any friends really, or even people to talk to, being basically antisocial, made me did think that there is something different about me. Not wrong with me. I come to realize that now, but I just always saw myself as like there was something wrong. Like, why can I not have friends or a girlfriend or whatever? And to some extent I still feel this way, because the when I did finally get friends and kind of sort of a girlfriend, which I talked about in the last episode of the podcast, but when that happened, I basically had to mostly change myself, and I didn't like that. I had to change myself to make friends, and only a few friends stuck around when I revealed basically my true self of who I was, and even then I still tried to keep like a slightly persona, I'm making kind of persona references here, which I love the series anyway, but basically I kept myself, my real self hidden, and even if I showed my true self to others, like like a very close friend or something like that, I still kind of kept a mask up to some extent, and I was just always afraid to like take it off. And I was wondering, do other people do this? Is this just me? Why do I feel like I have like separate personalities, like in school and at home or whatever? Like it just felt weird. And yeah, this came on for quite a while. Eventually I kind of learned to live with it, because I eventually did find some, not many, but like some true friends, in my life. They were far less, like especially in high school compared to a middle school where I had tons more technically, but like again, that was through pretending to be someone else. But again, I eventually just learned to live with it. But this is where COVID happened, the pandemic. Because of the pandemic and COVID, there was lockdowns, there were online classes, and this is where something turned on for me. I learned to live with myself for the way I was. I always thought I was weird, different, but I never knew what it was. There were some cases early on where like it makes more sense. Like I had a friend that was autistic too, and we were very similar. Another friend that was very similar to me, and he has ADHD and possibly autism. I don't know about that last part, but either way, I had these neurodivergent friends, and I was similar to them, so I should have probably suspected something, but I didn't. But anyway, but COVID-19, and the pandemic awoke something in me where, because of online classes, because of not having to interact with other people, that made me realize how happy I was. I was happy, and this is where the craziness started to come back up, because I'm like, okay, what the heck is going on? Because I love just, like, I could hang out with my family, which is basically how I get the most interaction with people, which I'm fine with. I love my family. In fact, sometimes you could say I talk too much to them, but that's besides the point. The point being, I was fine just not having really any friends or talking to anyone. I was happy, and this continued on throughout. This was halfway through freshman year. That's when the COVID happened for me, and then all the way through sophomore year, I was doing online classes, and I loved it. I like almost all my classes were, well, I loved it for a few reasons. One, most of the time we didn't have to have the camera on, and even if I did, there was like 2 classes I had the camera on. One because it was mandatory, and 2, the other one was because I don't know, I liked the teacher and I wanted to have my camera on. I don't know, but like even then, even if we were required to have the camera on, or we had to participate, the classes were actually pretty short for the most part, besides the one where the camera was mandatory, because like a lot of teachers just ended off early, or gave us a lot of free time, which was really nice. But the biggest thing was just the fact that I didn't have to talk to anyone. I didn't have to see, like, maybe I had to see some people's cameras, but barely sometimes, and even then, they weren't paying attention to me. They were paying attention to, like, the teacher. Like, it was just so nice. And then when the pandemic, COVID, was starting to die down, and they told us we had to go back to regular classes, physical classes for our junior year, I started to freak out, not gonna lie. I kind of was like, oh, no, like, why is this happening to me? I don't want this, no. And I was terrified. But I tried to deal with it. I tried to prepare myself the summer of, but I was just so scared and nervous because, like, I just didn't want to go back. I loved online classes, and like, man, I was so worried, but I tried to calm myself, by, watching videos. I love watching videos, to calm myself, or playing games, but this is where the discovery happens, where I'm like, wait a minute, I think I have autism, which is the summer of in between, sophomore year and junior year. In fact, a little bit before the summer, like it was like May. It was close to the end of the school year, of the online classes. I discovered a video. Well, look, this was a YouTube channel I watched a lot of because they covered cartoon stuff, like Infinity Train, Steven Universe, Toon Ruins, Leah. God, I don't remember the other name, but like Leah, Toon Ruins, that YouTube channel, I've been watching her channel for a while. I don't anymore, sadly, but one time they put out a video. She put out a video talking about autism. Like, I think she put out like 2 videos, one about autism in media, and then one about like just autism in general. I forgot what the detail was for that video. But I watched those videos, and then I'm like, wait a minute, she's talking a lot, and like she mentioned she was autistic too, and she mentioned a lot of stuff that I related to, that many other autistic people have, and I'm like, wait a minute, these other people are kind of like me. They do this thing, they do that. That's very sus, as they say. That's very weird. So that was where my journey really began. From Toon Ruins, Leah's video about autism. Again, I know there were I believe there were like 2. I think I watched one that had to do with the general autism, first, and then there was like a media one, autism in media, or maybe they were the same video. I don't know. Either way, it was one video about autism from her channel, and that's really got my ball rolling, to make me learn about autism and find out that that is what I have. So from there, I looked into many other YouTube channels that covered autism. People like Yosemite Sam, who I don't watch anymore, is a lady with autism, and also she has ADHD. I believe she was diagnosed with that more recently. She also has a few kids, so that was an interesting perspective. At the time, he was known as Asperger's from the inside, but now he's called Autism from the Inside. His name is Paul, I believe. That's the guy who runs the channel. But yeah, I love watching his videos, and that's where I learned a lot about autism. There were many videos from different YouTubers as well. Indie Andy, I believe that was his name, who sadly passed away very young. But yeah, all of these people I looked into, and then I'm like, I relate to so much of what they're talking about stuff like imaginary friends, or, imagination, or loneliness, or antisocialness, or, there's like a phenomenon called Ecola. God, I don't remember how it's pronounced, but it's basically where you repeat the same thing over and over in your head, and that is what I literally did. I described it to you guys earlier, you know. God, I wish I remembered how to pronounce it, but yeah, that was a thing. Another thing, speech therapy. I had to go to speech therapy. In fact, if you watch my videos, you know I suck at speaking. So, yeah, like, a lot of these things just made sense. And I also did some online tests to find out if I was autistic. Now, I did know that, you know, online tests are not conclusive, you know, just because you got like, you know, you got, oh, you're autistic on this test doesn't mean you actually are. But I did a lot of tests and a lot of them did say, yeah, I'm autistic. So I think there was something to that along with my experiences. So I started to really believe that, yes, I did have autism. But here's the problem. I was worried to tell my mom. Now, why? Well, it's not like she's very strict, you know? In fact, she's very loose with, like, rules. She's a very cool mom, in all honesty. You know, we're more like friends, really, you know? And sometimes I even, like, parent her, you know, or my brother, you know? Like, we're a close family, you know? But I just felt afraid to tell my mom, and I was just probably just nervous that she would react differently to me, you know? Like, I don't know, I knew she would love me no matter what, but I was still nervous for the thing. So I did not end up telling her that's why I say it was like around May, where throughout most of the summer, I did not tell her about, oh, I think I'm autistic. And I just let it be for like until like July, like in the middle of July, where I finally told my mom, look, I think I have autism and here are the signs for it. And yeah, and then she was very supportive of me, and we made an appointment a month later. Here I'm gonna be talking about this in a bit, you know, later on in this episode, but the diagnosis process for me was actually pretty quick, all things considered. It still took like a few months, but like overall it was really quick compared to other people that had to wait many more months or even a few years, you know, but we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, we made an appointment and my mom started looking into autism, you know, and she realized that, oh my God, a lot of the signs that, you know, basically she realized the same thing as me, but, you know, because I wasn't around when, or I don't remember anything when I was like, you know, from 0 to like 4 years old, you know. My mom had more insight into that and like how I couldn't walk for like the longest time. I also did things very unorthodox, like how I learned how to go number 2 before going number 1. In fact, I went to go number 2 like really early on, but like I didn't know how to go number 1 properly until like first grade. Like, oh my, I remember peeing my pants in like kindergarten, like twice, I believe. So yeah, it was not that good, but I digress. She started to again learn about autism and figured, oh my God, you are autistic, probably because a lot of the signs you share. And this is the point where my mom started to become a little bit sad, not for me but for herself, basically blaming herself for not being able to catch it sooner. And my mom still kind of feels that way. She still says sorry sometimes, you know, that she didn't notice right away, you know. And I love her, but she doesn't have to keep apologizing. I mean, it's really, if I'm being honest, it's also partly my fault. I didn't suspect this even sooner, not even in like middle school. So, you know, we could say it's like things happen, you know. We didn't know, like I had no idea what autism was until middle school, and even then I didn't know the specific signs or whatever. And yeah, like it was just a hard thing, but I'm just glad I finally learned about it now, you know. So anyway, the time has come for August. In fact, it was like the day after school began for my junior year, or like 2 days after, I mean. So it was like the very first week of school, back to school, and I had an appointment for my diagnosis thing to get like an interview. And yeah, like I said, this interview went by relatively quick. Like it only took like a month of waiting time, to get in. And in the actual process with the doctor I had, the lady, she was a nice lady, by the way. It only took like 2 hours. It was really quick. Like she asked me some questions. We did like a paper thing, and like there was a lot of things where she couldn't tell me exactly yet. But after we were done, she was like, "Oh, I'm not gonna say anything yet official. I didn't get my official diagnosis papers until like 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, around there. But she did say, "Oh, I think you might actually be autistic." And I was so happy. I was actually crying during this thing, and she was kind of surprised because I mean, this is what I told her, that I just felt happy finally having a definition for what was different about me, not what's wrong with me, but what's different. Like, why am I the way I am? I finally know I'm not just like a crazy psycho that like just like I know what I have, and that's just so nice, and I just felt so happy. But yeah, that's what I did after. It was like a very simple process, Again, very quick. But two weeks later, I did get the diagnosis papers. And even though the lady was nicer, she was nice, the paper was kind of really more formal and kind of like was kind of harsh, not gonna lie. The paper I got slightly harsher, but like the lady was more nicer, in person. But like the paper talked about, oh god, I have it somewhere still. I might show it for like a video or something, not in this podcast, or like maybe a community post or something. That would be a good idea to show my diagnosis paper, because there was a lot of things where it kind of felt kind of hurtful, but like it did make sense, stuff about my speech. And they also suggested that I go into therapy, which my mom was like, no, because we don't have money. So still haven't gone to therapy. I went to therapy when I was young for when my dad passed away, like around second grade, but we stopped because eventually we just couldn't keep paying for it. So yeah, that was the thing. But anyway, back to the autism stuff. The overall process was pretty quick. And yeah, I was just happy I finally learned about my autism. And this is, again, where my mom started to say sorry and all that stuff. And I was actually mostly cool with how things were. I did feel, even though I was happy, I knew I was autistic, I did feel like something, I was still very bummed out about the school stuff, about the in-person classes, like I was just very disappointed. In fact, I've been having this, I have this bad habit of like being absent a lot in school, and I think I know why. I just don't like to be around other people. But this started to kick back up again. Obviously, I was like not absent at all for the online classes, besides like 2 times, and that's because I really had to. And even then I still did the work, like basically the same day. Like I basically was for like appointments or stuff. But I was like not even really absent then, but I was absent a lot throughout the rest of the school time. And this is where it started to pick back up again, the junior year absences. And I just wanted to find a way, like I was mostly fine with it, but like towards the end I wanted to find a way of like, going to school without having to be in person, So I tried to look into this when the summer came around, and then my senior year, where, it will be the last year, but I still wanted to try to find something because at the very end of junior year, it started to become a little bit overwhelming, and this is where it became really overwhelming in my junior year, where I was just horrible. Like before I was horrible with my absences, but this was like 10 times worse. I was absent so many times in my senior year, and I just wanted to find a way. Okay, how can I go to school without having to be in person? I tried to do multiple different things. I tried to go like there was like a community college thing for my school where you could do like dual classes where online stuff like it was like a thing I tried to do, but you need to have your grades higher whatever overall, and like my grades were only good for like some classes, so that was a bust. I also tried to do this is where I talked about at the very beginning. I tried to get my 504 plan or whatever, and I believe this is what happened. The lady I talked to do my 504 plan, it was basically like another diagnosis thing for my autism. It was very similar, but actually it was probably around the same time, maybe even a little bit shorter. I thought it felt a little bit longer because it was separated between like 30 minutes every couple of days, but I think overall if you want to add them up, it's probably around the same time I did for my official diagnosis. But anyway, this lady was basically talking to me. We were doing more tests to see if I was autistic in the sense of the school's definition of autism, which is basically, do you have problems and do you need help? And I tried to do that, and she was very nice. I liked her, but she denied me. She said that I was just too smart, too normal-ish for the 504 plan. And this was like the breaking point. I was so devastated that I just stopped coming to school. Basically, I kept being absent. My mom would get mad at me, which I hate. I hate when my mom is mad at me because we have a close relationship, and when she's mad at me, I feel so sad. And then like the school was mad at me. Eventually, we decided it would be best to drop out of school because look, like there was just so many credits that I needed to make up, like the lost hours too. Like there was a lot of things I needed to make up, and I would have to come to school more times, like stay after school, before school, go on the weekends for like summer or for like tutoring. Like I would have to do so many things, and it just felt overwhelming, and I just didn't want to be in person anymore. This is where I'm like, yeah, I just don't want to be in person talking to people, talking to teachers, talking to students. Like I just didn't want to do that. And yeah, so my mom gave me a choice to drop out, and I did, and I was sad because I know she wanted to see me graduate and walk on the stage, though she eventually did. In fact, I'll talk about that in a bit, but it was just sad, but I needed to do it. But as soon as I dropped out, we worked towards getting my GED, which was really simple for the most part, where I didn't have to really interact with anyone really, besides the ceremony, and even then that was actually kind of fun. But basically, after I dropped out, I went to work on getting my GED, where I went to some classes to do like these Prudo tests. What's it called? Like the tests before the actual GED test to make sure, okay, you can totally do this. And then I had to wait like a while before I could actually do the test. And then I did it. I did that in person. And it was actually fine. I didn't have to talk to anyone. I liked it. And I passed. You also had to do it like 4 separate times, one for science, one for math. And then like they took varying amount of degrees. I usually finished them within like 2 hours, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more, but it was overall really quick. And I actually got my GED faster than if I would have finished school normally. Like I was able to get the document, my Texas basically diploma in like May, like early May, when I would usually, when from my school you would get the diploma, you were gonna get it like at like in the middle of June or whatever, for like high school graduates, so I basically got it like a month and a half early. So overall it wasn't that bad. My mom still got to see me walk down the aisle because in the ceremony thing for the GED, there were other people there, lots of them similar to my age, and we got to put on a gown, and there was like even some sort of lady representative there talking about how, you know, even though we couldn't succeed in school, we still were able to succeed in this own way, you know, and we'll make great things for ourselves. And she made a very important speech that I actually really cried at and loved, but it was a very nice speech, and it was full of a lot of people, you know, and we brought my grandma too. So overall, and like we took lots of pictures, so overall it was just a happy experience that even though I didn't graduate technically officially from high school, I'm still happy that my mom did get to see me graduate and walk down the aisle in some way, shape, and form, along with my grandma, you know, even if it wasn't the way they intended. I'm glad, you know. But yeah, that is where we are at now, where I got my GED and I am making YouTube stuff. So what's the plan going forward for me? Well, I will be going to college. I talked about this in other videos on the channel, but basically I want to get my social security thing, you know. I was denied it, even though I am disabled, you know, autism is a disability, but I was denied it. But we're working to fight against that, you know, and actually get the money we deserve. And once we do get that, which takes a while, you know, legal process takes a while, you know, but once we do that, I will go to college, and I am going to be doing that online. I do sometimes feel like, oh, like this just like, even though I'm happy of course that I'm autistic and I understand what it is and all that stuff, sometimes it creeps into my mind that, oh, sometimes I wish I wasn't. Sometimes I wish I was just normal, you know. I wish I could talk to these people. I wish I could have friends. I could, you know, get a girlfriend, you know. And it's just so hard. It's like 10 times harder for autistic people. And sometimes that gets me down. And I really dislike that. But like overall, I'm still happy about, you know, knowing what autism is and knowing that I have it, because in a lot of ways autism is really cool. You get heightened senses, you know, you notice details when other people don't. There's just a lot of side effects. In fact, I put out a community post talking about how autism is basically a superpower with very horrible side effects, and I fully agree with that. So yeah, like until I get to college, you know, and I do online classes, which I, you know, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should do in person, even though I feel like I would not even, like I would struggle to do it in person, you know, even though I wouldn't make new friends probably, or at least talk to people and maybe even meet a girlfriend. I feel like it would just be easier for me to do online and maybe do online dating at some point. I don't know. I've thought about doing that. But anyway, until then, until I go to college or whatever, I'm just going to keep making YouTube videos, and I'm having a bunch of fun doing it. I like talking to you guys, and I love making content. So yeah, I'm really happy where I am at now. And it was all because I finally found out what was basically wrong with me. What was the issue with me? Why was I so weird? Why was I so different? And I discovered, oh, this is autism. Oh my god. I did not realize that. But anyways, I think that's gonna be it for the podcast episode today. If you're autistic, how did you discover you were autistic in the first place? Were you diagnosed early on, or were you diagnosed late in life, like I was? I forgot to mention I was diagnosed at 16 years old. So yeah, that was something, but it made my life make way more sense. But anyways, I'll see you all next time for another video and for the next podcast episode, whenever that is. Thank you, Nils Edom, Damian Grace, Sparkly Brawler, and Scythe for becoming YouTuber Patreon members. Like, subscribe, play some Xenoblade, and I'll catch you guys next time for more. Peace, bye everyone.